Good evening, and thank you for attending. My name is Denise McKelvey, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's candidate debate. Before we begin, please silence all phones and electronic devices. Additionally, please refrain from any interruptions to the debate as it is being recorded for on-demand viewing and post-captioning services. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor for this evening's event. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign finance reform and public education measure initiated by Arizona citizens and passed by voters in 1998. The Clean Elections Act was created to allow campaigns to be more issue-oriented and less negative. The system provides full funding for qualified candidates who participate voluntarily. The candidates agree to abide by the Clean Elections Act and rules, which include contribution and spending limits, foregoing special interest money, as well as participating in commission debates. The candidates invited to participate tonight are in contested primaries. Candidates in uncontested primaries are not included in the debate process. For tonight's debates, questions have been prepared by Clean Elections based on a voter survey, as well as questions that have been submitted by voters through the Clean Elections smartphone app. However, we do encourage live audience questions, so if you have questions, please print them clearly on the note cards you were given when you came in this evening. Our volunteers will pick up the cards and deliver them to me. If you need additional cards, please just raise your hand. We screen the questions for clarity to eliminate duplications, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. The debate is scheduled for 1 hour, so we may not get to all the audience questions, but we'll do our best. There's an independent timer who will see to it that all the candidates have their allotted time to answer questions and will tell them when their time is up. Tonight's debate includes opening statements, 1 minute each. We'll move on to an icebreaker with a quick lightning round. The first half of the debate begins with 2 minutes to answer audience questions. Each candidate will answer the same audience question, and we will rotate which candidate responds first. After all candidates have responded to the question, the first responding candidate will be given an additional 30 seconds to speak. The second half allows for candidate-specific questions with 1 minute each to answer. If you have questions for a specific candidate, please include the candidate's name on the note card. It will be considered in the second half of the debate. Lastly, the debate will end with 1 minute each for closing statements. Okay. We ask that you remain polite to all the candidates and give them a fair and uninterrupted hearing, no matter how strongly you agree or disagree with what's being said. So now we'll introduce our candidates. Ms. Kristen Engel, Democrat, traditional candidate running for state representative. Ms. Courtney Froggy, Democrat, traditional candidate running for state representative. Ms. Stephanie Mock, Democrat, traditional candidate running for state representative. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name and will progress from that starting point. The closing will be determined by reverse alphabetical order by last name. Ms. Engel, will you please start the opening remarks?
Well, hello, and thank you for being here. I'm truly honored to be part of this panel of candidates for the Arizona State House. But this election is not really about us up here on the panel. It's really about you. And as Michelle Obama said so eloquently on Monday night, it's about what are we going to leave to our kids. This election is about reversing years of cuts to public education that are bankrupting our children's future, cuts that are chasing away good teachers and new businesses from our communities. This election is about investing in Southern Arizona so that my daughter and all of our children can have a bright future right here in Tucson. My name is Kirsten Engel, and I respectfully ask for your vote. I'm a professor at the University of Arizona's Law School with a daughter in Tucson's public schools. I am a lawyer. I'm a mom in lawyer's heels. I have the skills, the passion, and the know-how to fight for you.
Thank you. Ms. Froggy.
Thank you. And I would like to say a special thank you to the Clean Elections for allowing us and for allowing so many people the opportunity to run for office who otherwise would not be able to. I am Courtney Froggy. I am running as a team with Representative Mock and Senator Bradley for your second LD10 House vote after we send Representative Mock back to the legislature. I'm running plain and simple because I would not be alive if it wasn't for the sacrifices and the relationships of Arizonans who came long before me. I'm a fifth generation Arizonan, born in District 10. It was relationships that led me to, one, survive and live because I received life-saving open heart surgery from UMC in '82, but also to go on and earn my master's degree and finally come back to LD10 when my grandmother was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And since then, for nearly 10 years, I've been on the ground doing the work, building coalitions with many of you here tonight. And I'm running because I want to continue our work to get real results for Arizona families in the legislature. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Mock.
I appreciate you all being here again. I'm Stephanie Mock, and I first ran for office 4 years ago because I wanted to protect and advance the kind of educational opportunities that that made me and helped make me a first-generation college graduate. Additionally, I wanted to protect the healthcare opportunities that I also had that saved my life. When I ran initially, the ACA wasn't in place, and I couldn't even get healthcare, and that was in the United States of America a travesty to me. So since then, in the 4 years, I've built relationships that have resulted in success legislatively and in other influences and up in the legislature. I have learned the system. I know the issues, and ultimately, I've shown up for you 100% of the time. I'm one of 4 legislators who have never missed a single vote in 4 years. And I plan to show that same dedication going forward. I hope I've earned your vote, and I hope that I can have it once again. Thank you.
Thank you. So in an attempt to lighten the mood for tonight's debate, we're going to do a quick lightning round of this or that. This will allow us to get to know the candidates a little better. Candidates, please just answer with one word. We'll start with Ms. Froggy. Snapchat or Instagram?
Instagram. Yeah.
Ms. Mock, Star Wars or Star Trek?
Neither.
That's an option.
Ms. Engel, Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Dunkin', great donuts.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to start the debates, the first half of the debate now, with each candidate answering the same question. Our first question for the evening is, we'll start with Ms. Mock. With Proposition 123 being such a controversial issue, can you speak towards your vote and your plan for education funding?
Well, Prop 123 was one of the most difficult questions that has ever come before me, ultimately, because it's it was a really tricky situation between choosing today's kids and tomorrow's kids, and I don't think that was. I thought it was a false choice, first of all, and now that it's in place, I think that we need to concentrate on making sure that there is a second step and a third, and I think some of those steps need to include making sure that Prop 123 in 2021 will expire, and we need to make sure that goes on, and potentially even make it from 0.6 cents to the 1 cent, so that we can cover some of our costs. I think we need to stop cutting our budget at this point. When we have bills to pay and we can't pay them, we need to stop cutting and making sure that we can actually meet those obligations. We have $12 billion in tax credits that we can look into to make sure whether they're actually accomplishing the goals that we intended for them when we initially passed some of those credits. And if they don't, then we have to make sure that we have clawback measures and accountability to either the jobs that they were intended to create, the industries that we wanted to protect, or some other valid purpose for the state. I think that we need to also work on measures to improve our economy so that we can have the additional revenue that can help pay for some of the educational programs that we need to prevent some of the failures in society, like our growing crisis in the DCS system, like our growing private prison and other prison in industry. I think that there's a lot of things that we can be doing as second steps, third steps in education that would go way beyond what the maintenance that Prop 123 has now covered.
Thank you. Ms. Engel.
Well, I was a vocal opponent of Prop 123. And actually, I think that distinguishes me from the other candidates up here, that early on, I spoke out against it. It was just not enough money for our kids, for our teachers, or for our schools. And as I have gone door to door talking to voters, the reaction I get is that Prop 123 was a bait and switch. It was sold as something that was going to help our teachers, but instead what it seems to have been is very little money for our teachers, and instead really robbing from our savings, the savings account for our kids, that permanent trust fund. We got to remember that was just a settlement of a lawsuit. It did nothing to reverse the historic cuts to public education. So it wasn't a very good first step, and we haven't seen anything for the governor's office about steps 2, 3, or 4. In my mind, step 2 should be to find a dedicated source of permanent funding for our schools. We've really got to stop this pattern of going where the schools have to go hat in hand up to the legislature every single year to beg for money. 2, we need to return to pre-recession levels of funding for our public schools. And number 4, we've got to do something about investing in just the physical, our physical plant of our schools. Even a single child that goes to a school that doesn't have working air conditioning is way too much. This is something that is very important to me. It's the number 1 priority of my campaign, to fund our public schools, and not only K through 12. I hope I have a chance to talk later about our community colleges and higher education, but with a child in public school, I'm going to work very hard on this issue.
Thank you. Ms. Froggy.
Thank you. As a product of Arizona schools, I would not be able to say my own name right now if it wasn't for the 6 years of free speech therapy I received. I'm raised by a single mother who is a public school teacher here in Arizona. And driving across our beautiful state, my grandmother and my grandfather made sure I knew the state land trust and how it was able to get my grandmother off a farm on the west side of Phoenix, which she was born on, and ended up earning her PhD and founding a department at the University of Arizona. Look, Prop 123, as Representative Mock said, was absolutely one of the most difficult, heart-wrenching decisions our state had to make. And at first, to be clear, I'm having a hard time, as many Arizonans are, talking about this because it is that painful. But the facts of the matter is it passed. It's the law of the land, and we demand a second step, and we know that it's not going to come out of the governor's office. We need to give ourselves permission to take that next step, that second step, that third step together. That is how we've gotten here today, and we can do it again. And as Representative Mock said, it's making sure we pass that 301 money again, and if we can get another component into that bill that will allow us to bring back some of that state land trust money, I'm not going to tell you what might be the easy thing. I'm going to tell you the hard thing. You always know I'll be honest with you. We need a multi-session, multi-prong, full coalition of all stakeholders to come together and flesh this out together. And I will yet again be working with our friends at TEA, AEA, TFA, all of the school board members to make sure that we do this together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mock, your 30-second response.
No, thanks.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll start with Ms. Engel. Please describe in as much detail as time allows one significant accomplishment in your non-political career.
I'm limited to one. Well, as some of you may know, I came to Tucson in 2005 with my husband and my daughter, and I moved here from Boston, where I served as the head of the Environmental Protection Division of the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office, and also in the Public Protection Bureau. And that experience provided me some wonderful opportunities to use government to improve people's lives. And I was just reflecting today about some of the things I was able to do when I was there in Massachusetts. And one does stick out. Near the end of my time at the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office, we were able to sit down and hammer out an agreement with all of the national paint companies in the United States to work out an agreement where there was going to be a warning label on all cans of paint, warning people about the hazards of lead paint exposure when they renovate their homes. And this is responsible for about 30% of lead-based paint poisonings of children. And this agreement that we hammered out actually became an example for all states. Actually, 45 states then entered into a similar agreement with our nation's paint companies. And I think this is an example of how we can use government to improve our lives and the lives of our children. And I think it also shows that I can work to bring people to the table. If you think that those paint companies wanted to have anything to do with saying anything about their responsibility for lead paint poisoning, you have another thing coming. That was the big concern of theirs, that this would be another tobacco case, tobacco liability. So, but we did get them to put out that warning label, and I think it's been effective, and I'm very proud of that.
Thank you. Ms. Frage.
Thank you. My most significant accomplishment, not in my political life, that's a hard question for me to answer because this is just who I am my entire life. I've been political in third grade in an Arizona public school. I started in Earth Club when we were all rather anxious about recycling, and I'm looking out and I'm thinking our beautiful bins out there now. But honestly, it is, at the end of the day, all we have are our relationships with other people. And the most significant thing I've done is leaving London when I was finishing my dissertation and coming home to Tucson to LD10 to care for my grandmother when she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and all of the doctors and the community that came together to support her and the rest of my family in her transition. And then years later, going through it again with my grandfather. And I am forever indebted to this community for that and for so many other things. And I think that really tells you a lot about my values and my character. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mock.
Thank you. Initially, I was going to say a lot of the volunteer work that I've done with a lot of other people, because it's immensely satisfying to see the look on people's faces when you're able to give them something. But as I've thought here for a couple more seconds than the other two have gotten, I have to really think back further than that, because I wouldn't have been able to give anything had I not been given what I had and struggled through surviving my accident. because ultimately that's the proudest thing I am, that I have in my past. And the reason, and it's not just that, it's the fact that I was able to survive and thrive. I went through, surgeries. I ended up going to college, graduating, being the first of my family to graduate with a double major and a minor while having surgeries on breaks. And, I had to relearn how to write with my left hand. I was visually impaired. I was legally blind during that time. And to be able to say that I've made that accomplishment allowed me to do all of the other things in life, including serve office today. And so, I use those same creative techniques and that same perseverance as I'm advocating for some of the people who also share those struggles in life. I understand exactly what it's like to try to overcome on a continual basis some of the struggles that we face, whether it's poverty, whether it's healthcare crisis, whether it's not having access to the opportunities that make you financially sound. Those are all things that I struggled with personally. And because of that, I'm able to advocate better for my community and for myself on a continual basis. And for that, I'm very proud.
Thank you. Your 30-second response, Ms. Engel?
I think I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question. As an Arizona state legislator, what is your position on a resolution in favor of an amendment to the U.S. Constitution which states that money is not equal to speech and corporations are not people? This question goes to Ms. Froggy.
Thank you. Sadly, right now it is the law of the land. Progressives in our Democratic Party and our values is not reflected in this, but it is the law of the land. As a legislator, we need to see this come up again at the Supreme Court level. And thank you again for being here while the DNC is on tonight. And we've been hearing that hopefully our Madam President will see that this is enacted in the next 40 days. So that's the level I understand that is on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mock.
Thank you. Citizens United absolutely needs to be overturned. There's no question in my mind that corporations are absolutely not people, and money should not equal a singular voice on top of the individual's voice that either works there or runs the company. That's a no-brainer for me. I think that we just do need to be very careful about amending our Constitution. It is our guiding document. It's supposed to be a skeleton, and anything that we add to it or subtract from it needs to have thorough analysis. We need to make sure that it's not affecting other parts of our Constitution and other things that we don't intend to. So I think that whenever we do that, we need to be very careful. However, I do agree that it's been enormously devastating to our country to have the influence of money in the way that it has been to politics today.
Thank you. Ms. Engel.
Thank you. I would be in favor of such an amendment. I really feel like the money that is being poured into elections in our country is really undermining our democracy. And I also am concerned about heedlessly amending our Constitution, but when it comes to the very foundation of our democracy, I think that's when you do actually have to have a change to the Constitution. And unfortunately, we have had a Supreme Court that has been unwilling to revisit that decision, and now we have a hold on the, we'll see what happens after the election. If that issue, we will return to that issue. Arizona has been, there's been a particular place where it seems like we have a lot of this dark money, and we've seen it influence the race for the governor. We've seen a lot of money poured into the election of Arizona Corporation Commission measures. And as a result, I think you're seeing decisions from that commission that are in favor of the utilities that are alleged to have poured that money into those elections. I think the stakes are very high on this. We do need to do something major to reverse this, or we're in danger of losing our true democracy.
Thank you. Ms. Froggy, your 30-second response.
I think we're clear. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The next question, we'll start with Ms. Mock. Do you support a national single-payer health care plan?
Thank you. I'm really happy to receive this question, actually, because I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding about what single payer actually is. Single payer is misconstrued often as single provider, which is not the same. So often people think, oh, the government's going to give me my care. Well, that's not actually the case. Single payer means that you can use the government's, much like Walmart buys something and wants to buy in bulk and can buy for the best price. And if you use the government's that leverage, then you can do better for all the people in making sure that they have the best price for their healthcare services and goods. And the other thing that I think is also misunderstood when we talk about single payer is that there are 1,000 different versions of what that can look like. And so, I think that people simplify this issue to think, oh, this is just the way it's going to be. Well, we can have certain products and certain services bought in certain ways that might be different than others depending on what's most appropriate and such. So I want people to understand that some version of that actually might be appropriate, but maybe not what people are often thinking when they hear that on the news in a 30-second news clip.
Thank you. Ms. Engel.
I think that might have been a good choice for the United States to have taken. At the time, it was deep into debating what kind of a health care law we should have. I'm not sure that right now we are having trouble just holding on to the Patient Protection Act, so-called Obamacare. And so I think we need to be spending our time holding on to that act and improving it as opposed to basically rethinking what we have now. Let's think of the successes of Obamacare, providing medical care to hundreds of thousands of people that didn't have it before, reducing those costs that we were paying through emergency room visits in our hospitals, getting rid of the bar upon insurers using pre-existing conditions to keep people off of insurance. I think that's been very important. We do have some real issues with health care. Drug costs are just out of sight. There's such low reimbursement rates from Medicare that increasingly we have doctors going to concierge practices, which I'm very concerned is really going to hurt the availability of medical care to so many people who can't afford that. So I would say there are many things that we need to work on. We should do it within the context of the current law.
Thank you. Ms. Froggy?
Thank you. And I'm also incredibly grateful that this question is brought up. I obviously was born with a pre-existing condition. I was one of those kids growing up who could not have health insurance, and the Affordable Care Act changed my life. So absolutely, do I want to see it expanded? I disagree that it's an either-or proposition. And I want to extend the opportunities to live to other people. And quite frankly, I've learned single-handedly here in Southern Arizona, there were multiple young people that had the same open heart surgery at the same time as I did, and their parents could not take on the luxury of medical debt. And they are not here today accordingly. And I will do anything I can to protect young people and Arizona families, regardless of your income level. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mock, your 30-second response.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that the idea of feasibility was brought up, because I think that it is probably infeasible at this point, given our current political system. But ideal? Yeah, I do think that that's absolutely true. I think that we need to cut out some of the costs. The United States citizens spend more on healthcare than any other country, hands down, yet do not have the kind of outcomes that many other countries who do use a single-payer-like system have. I think that the evidence is irrefutable that it's better, and I think that if we can inch towards something like that, we would be better off, even if it currently is not the case.
Thank you. At this time, we will transition to the second half of the debate, where each candidate will receive a separate question with 1 minute to respond. Again, if you have a specific question for a specific candidate, please note that on the card. We will start the first question with Ms. Mock. Ms. Mock, what issues were you most successful with in the past sessions?
What issues was I most what?
Were you most successful with in the past sessions?
Well, I would say that I'm one of the few legislators in the minority party who's been able to pass a piece of legislation under my own name. But I also am actually more proud in some ways of some of the legislation that I've been able to pass under the names of my colleagues. And I think that speaks to not only my the ideas that I have that are good and that I can reach across and make sure that they are good for our citizens and actually have some of the agreement by my fellow colleagues, but also the fact that I have the relationships that have lent themselves to me being able to have those open discussions and that influence over policy. I'm less concerned with taking credit than I am with accomplishing goals, and I think that my colleagues know that. And I think some of those oftentimes come around issues of disability, because I'm naturally the person that a lot of people in the disability community come to for some of their legislation. But it also has a lot to do with economic issues. I'm currently looking at more prison reform issues as well.
Thank you. Next question for Ms. Frage. How will you persuade Republicans to co-sponsor your bills?
Great question. I think, if I may be so bold as to reframe it a little bit, because as a member of the minority party, it's not realistic to say that you can go in and just bring people together and demand that they do this. What I will do is I will continue what I have done for nearly 10 years professionally and 30 plus years as an Arizonan, is work across the aisle to build diverse coalitions and get results for Arizona families. That is what I've a track record proven that I've done, and that is the way I continue to operate, and I look forward to doing for more Arizona families in the legislature if I'm honored with your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Engel, what is your view on climate change and how would you address it?
I was hoping I would get a chance to talk about climate change. I feel climate change is a very real and present danger for us, especially here in the desert Southwest. All of the models predict that the Southwest will have some of the biggest spikes in temperature, drought, more intense wildfires. So we are actually ground zero for climate change, but obviously it's a worldwide phenomenon that we need to address. With 300 days of sunshine, however, we have a great opportunity, actually, to push our economy in a direction of clean energy, and through that, not only to reduce climate warming greenhouse gases, but also to enhance our economy. So I am a strong advocate of solar power. I have been vocally speaking against some of the rate cases where the utilities in this state are really attacking rooftop solar. Some of those utilities are Arizona Public Service Corporation in Phoenix, our own TEP here. And actually it concerns me that one of the candidates here, Courtney Frage, has accepted $2,000 from the parent corporation of APS. I am thankful to have received Sierra Club's endorsement, and part of that, I think, is for my strong stand on addressing climate change and otherwise working to protect the environment. Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Mock, how do you plan to address the issue of sustainable funding for higher education?
That's a huge issue. We've had about $500 million taken away from higher education since the recession, and we definitely haven't restored any of it. In fact, we keep cutting. I don't know how we are going to succeed economically as a state if we don't invest in the very thing that propels us forward, which is education. We need to make sure that community colleges are well attended and that they're affordable. We need to make sure that they're working within the community for addressing some of the needs of the community. What kind of industries are in need of the workers, the high-paid, high-wage jobs, and high-quality jobs that we want to see in this community all depend on a skilled workforce. We see people like, companies like Raytheon saying that they're not going to expand here or maybe not even going to stay if they can't get some more skilled workforce in this community. So we only have, stop. Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
I was on a roll.
Ms. Froggy, as a freshman member of the minority, what are the actual steps you would take to get a bill passed?
Great. Well, one, I can hit the ground running on day one, which I'm the only candidate for the open seat that can say that. I've helped elect the majority of the Democratic caucus that we have. I'm very proud of that. Over the years, I've already earned the trust and the respect of my peers, and my folks across the aisle are also well aware of my reputation for being honest, forthright, and always looking how we can find the common ground and work together. I'm not about cheap gotchas. I'm about the work. And that's how I will serve in the legislature, just how I've served in real life. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Engel, you have a similar question. As a freshman member of the minority party, what is your plan to make strides in the legislature?
Well, we all know that the Arizona legislature is a tough place for Democrats. But if you think the state legislature is bad, try putting a bunch of legal academics together in one room. And that has been my experience. Most recently, the past 10 years, I've been here at the U of A. I just signed off of 3 years as the academic dean, where I was responsible for really moving the curriculum in many new directions, which were not always accepted by our faculty. So I feel like I do have some experience there, but certainly over my career, working as a lawyer, environmental lawyer, I wouldn't have been as successful as I have been if I have not been able to bring people to the table and to hammer out an agreement. And I think I would use those same skills of advocacy, strong advocacy. You've got to push as far as you can, but also making it clear what is the path for you to compromise together to push ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Mock, Arizona is 6th in the nation for having more nonviolent drug offenders than violent offenders in prison. What would you do as a legislator to reverse that trend?
There are a lot of things that we need to do, from every aspect of when a person touches someone in the criminal justice system, from how we police to how we have probation officers serve, to parole, to anti-recidivism programs. We need to address mental health issues. We need to make sure that substance abuse is an alternate. We need to use alternate courts that are specialized to deal with certain populations that can help decrease that population and actually save money, because a lot of these programs are actually more cost effective and better off at not only addressing the problem at hand before it gets worse, but then also preventing more and more people from entering the system or re-entering the system, which is a large problem in the state. There are lots of tiny things that we can help prevented from going back into prison. They're as small as giving them an ID card, for instance, to make sure that they have access to the financial market, and many other things I'd like to talk about at some point, but there's a lot we can do, and we should.
Thank you. Next question for Ms. Froggy. Why did you not choose to participate in the clean elections process?
Oh, thank you. All of the Democrats running have chosen not to. I know that early on, I had to make a decision. And basically is, as a leader, I never ask anybody to do something I will not do myself. And as political director of Arizona List, I spent years recruiting, training, and ensuring women running for state and local office were successful in fundraising, and particularly in competitive districts. District 10 is one of the most competitive districts in the state. And that is really where my decision came from. I wish that I could have, but quite frankly, at this point, it just comes down to leaders do as they say and walk the walk. And I have to hold myself to the same standards that I held others. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Engel, how has your experience working in education prepared you for advocating for higher education?
Well, I think I have a real understanding of what the impacts of these cuts to higher education really mean. And I would put higher education, I would include our community colleges as well. My experience has been at the university level, and I am seeing that the large debt that students are graduating with, some of the choices that students are having to make in order to stay in school. Just the other day, I was knocking at a door and had a conversation with a woman who was a nurse, and she told me about how she had to take her daughter out of the University of Arizona after 6 months. She had been so proud that she had been accepted at the university, but they simply could not afford it. Thank goodness we have the backup of the community colleges, which have been more affordable, but are struggling because we've also cut their state funding to zero. And her daughter was able to go to Pima Community College. So I feel like I'm seeing it firsthand, and also let's think about it. I mean, our research universities are also the bedrock of our economy here in Tucson, and it's also affecting that.
Thank you. Ms. Mock, what is your position on giving the transportation infrastructure more funding from gas tax increase?
I think that the first thing we need to do is stop sweeping the fund. We would probably be able to afford some of the projects that we wanted to accomplish, particularly down here in Tucson, where we get shafted all the time, and also on the border. I mean, we need to make sure that we increase our border commerce, and the only way to do that is to make sure that there's enough traffic lanes, that there's enough infrastructure, to make sure that they are, coming through our system safely, of course, and making sure that we work on security as well. But that is the first step, is to stop cutting and stop transferring those funds. I'm not so sure that increasing the tax is going to add as much as we want it to, given that we have a lot of hybrid cars and a lot of other more cost-effective measures to save on the gas. And so we're assuming that we're going to have the same percentage of revenues from that that we would once upon a time, because given the traffic, and that's just not the case. So I think that we need to find other places to find funding as well for infrastructure.
Thank you. Ms. Froggy, what are your thoughts on women's health issues and state making it harder to get help?
Well, as a proud board member of Planned Parenthood Advocates of Arizona, and someone who, my mother, before she was actually a public school teacher, she was a sex educator for Planned Parenthood Arizona. And from as early as I can remember, we have been under attack in Arizona. I remember 100,000 women and men marching in Phoenix in the early 90s, and wondering since then, where was that galvanized movement, that collective action that's necessary to show up? And we do. We turn up, we protest, but what it really, at the end of the day, when the rubber meets the road, what is going to protect Arizona women, particularly Arizona rural women, is making sure those that are affected, those that have been in the trenches, that have been working with the stakeholders on either side, have a seat in the legislature, that are able behind the scenes to negotiate and make sure that not just that we can get bills passed, it's not so much about that, but it's killing bad bills. And I've been there from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Engel, If elected, how will you determine what legislation you will work on?
I'll stick with my priorities, and those priorities are procuring funding for public education at all levels, K through 12, community colleges, and our universities, investing in the Southern Arizona economy, especially in areas such as solar power, biomedical sciences, and transportation, and protecting our environment, especially safeguarding our water resources. So that will determine my priorities. They are all very interconnected, and so I think I've got my work cut out for me. If we cannot fix the education problem, we're going to be deeper in the hole in terms of our economy. But we really do have opportunities here to invest in areas that we are good in and that are appropriate for Southern Arizona, solar power, and also biomedical sciences. Just recently, the U of A got a $43 million grant from the federal government. Those are good, and transportation being a conduit for trade with Mexico.
Thank you. Ms. Mock, your next question. What steps are necessary to get dark money out of Arizona government?
That's ultimately, I think we have to elect different people who are willing, truly, we just have to elect different people who are willing to stand up and say, listen, I don't want my legislator to receive money from unknown locations, from people who are influencing our vote in Arizona from potentially anywhere in the country. And when we can't trace that, we don't know who those legislators are beholden to. And so, I think that's really ultimately what it has to come down to, because we've tried and tried and tried. Well, and there's the initiative process as well, which I know that was attempted this year. And I think that oftentimes the legislature sees those things coming and then does anything they possibly can to cut our ability as citizens to participate in the process. In fact, you have an initiative on the ballot, this upcoming ballot, that will take away a lot of your ability to participate in the process in that way. And so, I think ultimately we just have to get those people out and make our voices loudly heard that we don't like this process.
Thank you. Mrs. Frage, what is your position on changing how schools are funded so that all public schools get equal funds instead of being funded by the property taxes in that school's area?
Absolutely. We need to make sure that we level the playing field for all Arizona children and all Arizona families. And I will work to build coalitions in the legislature to try to get this accomplished. However, I realize that it's going to take more than our work within the legislature. I'm going to have to count on my activists and organizations outside the legislature to help share the narrative of why this matters, to make sure that we have, again, that critical mass to put the pressure on legislators that might otherwise not want to work together on this coalition. But again, I am a product of inner city Arizona schools. And I was able to go on and read philosophy in Oxford. I may get nervous from time to time and stumble and have my speech stuff come back up, but my passion for Arizona families is crystal clear. Please do not confuse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Engel, you entered the LD10 race much later than your two opponents. Why did you decide to enter the race when you did?
Well, I entered once I knew that Bruce Wheeler was stepping down, and I realized the importance of the issue of education, and that I really had something to contribute by being somebody in the university, so I could speak on behalf of the students and the teachers of the cuts at the university level, and also being a mother of a student in TUSD's public schools, and being very active in her school, that I also could talk firsthand about what the impacts of those cuts are, and the struggles that the administrators and parents and teachers are doing to deal with those cuts. I also had to go through and, frankly, get permission to hold on to my job at the university and run. That was a several-month process. So I started looking earnestly at this issue early last fall, speaking to my family, speaking to groups and organizations, the unions, et cetera, working things out with my work, and then decided to declare.
Thank you. Ms. Mock, Democrats often seem reticent to challenge trickle-down economics. Has this dogma impacted our state economy?
Oh, absolutely. I sit on the Commerce Committee, and every single time I have to come to that committee, I have to make that argument that trickle-down does not work. It hasn't worked. We have many, many years in Arizona politics to prove a lot of that doesn't work. And ultimately, I think that we succeed most when we make sure that all things are taken care of. That all people, when they work hard and they contribute to the community and to their jobs, and they do right, can have a fair shake at life. They can have success. And when we don't make sure that there's opportunities for people to get all the things they need, like child care subsidies to go back to work, like many vocational technology programs, like other educational opportunities, like transportation to work, and many basic things that most privileged people never think about, then you never have the kind of people that will have the success in society that will lead to economic success for our country and our state.
Thank you. Ms. Froggy, House Democrats in Congress recently protested on the floor and stopped all proceedings. Would you do this in the Arizona legislature? And if so, for what issue?
Oh my goodness. Anytime Congressman John Lewis is brought up, my heart and soul is happy. I've, again, been able to work with him over the years. He's really helped me and other young organizers and coalition builders in this state process and understand exactly what we're under and going through and how we persevere and continue. You know, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't, my grandma says never say never, never say always, but I could think of more than one. And looking back in our past, I remember in 2010 when I was regional field director for the Arizona Democratic Party in 2 congressional districts with a great responsibility, and they said, we are not going to talk about 1070. I had to decide to stand up to leave, and I ended up moving down to Southern Arizona and working in the legislative caucus, and that's when I realized that the last line of defense is the legislature and our school boards. And I have the stop sign, and I follow stop signs. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Engel, although people aged 18 to 24, students especially, lean Democrat, voting turnout is abysmal. How will you motivate the youth to elect you?
It is so important to engage our young people in politics, and that is the thing that I really appreciated about Bernie Sanders. What is amazing is how people just loved him, and especially the young people. And it also shows that to get that enthusiasm for young people, it's really your ideas and what you stand for, and not your age. I am actually the oldest candidate here, but I think almost 20 years. And so I hope to be able to be an inspiration for the young people, as somebody who is willing to take a bit of a break from the intensity of my current job teaching in order to try to make progress on these incredibly important challenges that are facing our state. And I am very pleased to have the support of the current head of Students for Affordable Tuition at the U of A, who found out about my campaign and is one of my most wonderful volunteers. So I think that shows I can bring those folks in.
Great. Thank you. We'll now move into our closing statements for the evening. Ms. Mock, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thank you. Again, I really want to thank Clean Elections for having this and filming it so that we can have everyone who couldn't be here tonight to see the debate and the difference between the candidates. I am fighting for people who are fighting for themselves. And if you work hard, you play by the rules, you should be able to be successful. You should have the kind of the assurance that you can, afford to, sustain yourself and your family throughout life without having to worry about working 40 hours a week and still not getting by. And I think that, one of the things that we didn't really talk about as much directly is the economy. And I think that everything that I've done or everything that I'm fighting for directly leads into a strong economy. And a lot of that is prevention services. It's a lot of hand up, not hand out, which means that child care subsidies will get people back to work, again, to make sure that they can be successful for themselves. It's about, improving our infrastructure. It's about improving our education system to make sure that everyone has the ability to get by on their own. And if you want to find out more about me, please visit my website, stephaniemach.com. That's M-A-C-H. I answer everything personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Froggy.
Thank you. Again, I'm Courtney Froggy, running for LD10 State House because I want to make sure that current and future generations have the same opportunities that were afforded to me and those who came before me here in Arizona. I want to continue our work together, building diverse, beautiful coalitions to achieve real change for Arizona families. I hope that you can join me and the other vital members of our community who have taken a stand in this election and have come out and endorsed me as well as our team, Professional Firefighters of Arizona, the Association of Realtors, Labor, PALF, UFCW, Arizona SEIU, many, many other labor unions, the Technology Council, Stand for Children Arizona, the Tucson Metro Chamber has endorsed Representative Grijalva, Representative Mock, and Senator Bradley. I want to continue our work together in the legislature. You can learn more about me at froggyforhouse.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. England.
Yes, I am honored to have the endorsement of the Assistant Minority Leader, Bruce Wheeler, who has represented this very district so effectively for the past 6 years. I also have the endorsement of the Sierra Club, of the former City Council member, Molly McCassin, who's been a real community leader here, and many, many more past and current leaders in our district. But actually more important to me are the endorsements I've received by ordinary voters at their doors. People like Roberta, a public school teacher and a single mom whose mother is in hospice. People like Maria, a nurse whose daughter is going to Pima Community College. People like Mac and Darlene who want to see our economy grow so their children don't have to move away and find good paying jobs. All three candidates on this stage, I can confidently say, have worked to improve our district LD10, and no matter what the outcome is of this race, I am sure we will all continue to do so. What you need to decide is who will best represent you in our state legislature. If you'd like to learn more about me, go to www.angleforarizona.com. Thank you.
To our candidates, we thank you so much for participating in our forum tonight. And to our audience, we thank you for taking the time to come and inform yourselves before voting. And thank you very much for all your questions. We encourage you to visit www.azcleanelections.gov, where you can find information on the upcoming elections, download the Clean Elections app, and learn about the candidates running for office. A link to the video of this debate will be available, as well as other Clean Elections debate, within 72 hours of a scheduled debate. Please fill out the debate evaluation form that you received when you entered this evening and return it to one of our volunteers. Your feedback is very important to the Commission and will help improve future debates. Thank you all for coming tonight, and you are welcome to stay and speak directly with the candidates. Thanks again. Have a good evening.